everyone. Welcome back to KeptPodcast. My name is Tierra Lebbie, and I am the host of KeptPodcast. For all of my OGs that have been rocking with me since the beginning, welcome back, sisters. I hope you had an amazing weekend. And for those of you who this is your first time to run across my podcast, maybe someone shared it to you, or maybe YouTube shot it to you. Welcome. This podcast exists to help women who are navigating very difficult seasons learn how to navigate them with God. And I'm so happy that you're here today. It is busy season for me right now. I always feel like it's busy season, but to be honest, kids are home, which means more routines, more fun, but again, more busyness, but the good busy. So I'm hoping that you guys are had a great weekend and are looking forward to a great week. So today's topic, it's around forgiveness, but not centered on forgiveness. So when it comes to healing, most times we think about forgiveness. Forgiveness is a part of us growing into our wholeness, and it's necessary in our forgiveness process, right? But this is also the place that a lot of us get stuck. I know I got stuck there. And it's hard for us to think past the offense. And the thought that this person could possibly get away with what they did to you is like, I'm not trying to have it. Like, that's where the grudges come, the resentment comes, the bitterness comes. And so today I want to speak to you about one of the prerequisites to forgiveness. And it's oftentimes skipped over, but it was definitely a place that God kept me in for a long time. And this place is learning about vengeance. Yep. I'm going to talk to you about what vengeance is and its place not only in the plan of salvation, but also in your personal healing journey. And my hope is that by the end of this episode, you will come to the realization that vengeance really does belong to the Lord and why. So y'all, similar to probably most of you that are watching or listening right now, I went through a big season of betrayal with multiple relationships. And I just let people close to my circle. And when the betrayals happened, it cultivated a lot of anger. I mean, a lot of anger in me. Like, I don't know if you watched, it was one of the first couple of episodes in the season. I talked about like one of my journals was full of anger. That was that season of betrayal. And I was just angry for feeling like I was used. I was misunderstood. And honestly, my heart cried out for justice. I wanted justice for the wrongs that had been done to me. I did not want anyone to get away with anything they had did to me. And I'm sure most of you can relate, where you go through something and as much as you want to lean towards forgiveness, your heart also cries out for justice that was done. For me, they needed to pay. And I know that sounds bad, but that's really where my heart was at. I did not want them to get away with an ounce of the pain that was brought in because of the betrayal. But as I was spending time processing my heart posture with God, He showed me that I needed not only to hand over vengeance to Him, but I also needed to hand over my vindication. So as I'm reading through the book of Psalms, I'm hearing David's cry for vindication. And God just spoke so much to me. And it helped me to move from a place of bitterness to be able to actually forgive from a place of wholeness as God was healing me. And so first, before we even jump into the episode, I like to make sure we're on the same playing field as far as as it relates to definition. So what does vengeance mean? So in the Greek, what it primarily means is retribution or punishment. It's often connotated with divine justice or vindication. So what I want you to remember about vengeance is it means to avenge, defend, and maintain some type of justice, usually in a divine sense, right? And even as I was studying the word vengeance, I was thinking about it. I'm like, God, that's one of the natural dispositions that we turn to when we have been offended or wronged, right? Like, we want to avenge ourselves. We want to defend, protect ourselves. And we also want to maintain some type of justice concerning us. And while I know most of y'all listening saying like, yeah, Tierra, like that would just be the natural response, I want to offer you a different perspective on a way to enact forgiveness while still knowing that justice is being served. So the text that we're going to read from today is in the famous book of Romans, right? We're going to focus in Romans chapter 12, verses 17 through 19. All right. So as always, before we jump into the text, I like to give you a little bit of historical context. So Paul is writing to the church in Rome, right? And during this time, Rome is the capital of the Roman Empire. And so I want you to think about Rome like a bustling city. It has diverse backgrounds, diverse culture. It has a pretty large Jewish population, and it also has a growing Christian population. And so what Paul is doing as far as like writing the letter to the Roman church is he's trying to get them aligned on what the gospel is. And he's also answering a lot of theological questions about like justification by faith. And then he's also talking about how they should treat each other in the body. But he also mentions a few verses about how we as believers should treat those that are not within the body. But what really got my attention in reading chapter 12 was when Paul transitioned from verses 16 to 17. And this transition within the text, we see that he goes from the first part of Romans 12, talking about how we as believers are to treat each other. But then in verse 17, he jumps to how believers should treat everyone, right? So let's read it. So again, this is Romans chapter 12, verses 17 through 19. Repay no one evil for evil, but give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. I love the ESV translation of this because Paul starts out verse 17 with beloved. And for me, it gives such a tone. It reminds me of the tone that I have with my kids when they are trying to attempt something. But because of my experience, I know that the outcome that they're trying to achieve is not going to be achieved by the way that they're doing it. And in parallel, Paul is letting us know that our attempt to avenge ourselves will not get us what we think it will. And he gives us one simple instruction. Leave it to the wrath of God, because God has said that vengeance belongs to him and he will repay. And Paul is referencing Deuteronomy chapter 32 through 34, which is a song of Moses, where God is letting the Israelites know that vengeance belongs to him. Now, if we're really honest, and we like to keep it 100, we're going to keep it honest here, right? For some of us, the fact that God is saying vengeance is his and that he will repay, it does not provide us any sense of like comfort, right? Because we look at God as weak in some ways. Like he wouldn't pay back like I would pay back. He would just let them get away with what they're doing to me, because there is some type of belief in us that truly, again, believes that God handles sin with kid gloves. So then, because we believe that, we begin to see that our hands and our hearts start to conspire a plan to vindicate ourselves. But today, I pray that you'll be able to experience some freedom. And I'm going to share with you 3 main reasons why it is better that you leave it to God. So the first point, and if you have your journals, go ahead and write this out. For you ladies that don't have journals or you're just listening, you're driving to work, don't worry. I'm going to have this PDF document on my website and I'll put the link in the description box. But the first thing as to why you should leave it to God, as far as vengeance and vindication, is only God is able to judge a matter perfectly. All right, I'm going to say it again. Only God is able to judge a matter perfectly. So in order to enact justice, you have to be able to judge the circumstance, judge the person in totality, right? So that you can be able to discern the proper payback. There is a form of just judgment that has to be in place before you can enact any form of vengeance. But we see that the standard that God places on judgment is that he looks at the heart of the man, not simply the fruit that a man produces. We would need to be able to judge the motivations of someone's heart to be able to discern what proper retribution would be. And like many of us know, I know as soon as I said that, most of you guys thought about Jeremiah 17:9, where he says, the heart is deceitfully wicked, who can know it, right? So in order to be able to judge, we need to know the person's heart condition. We need to know their motivations, not just what they did, but what motivated them. What is the condition of their soul? But we don't even know ours. We're limited even in our knowledge of our own heart, which means then we will also be limited in our ability to judge and judge righteously because we can't consider all the intricacies of a person's soul like God does. All right, y'all, really quick. I know this episode is getting really good, but give me 1 second. I wanted to talk to you about a tool that I've created just for you. It's called the Kept Journal. In this podcast, we talk so much about how to navigate difficult seasons with God. And oftentimes we're talking about journaling and being honest and authentic. And so I've created a journal that has journal prompts. It has reference scriptures, reflective sessions that will help you to write out your thoughts and feelings with God, and then even giving space for him to speak back with you. It's something that I know has been a fundamental part of my relationship with God, and it has helped me to grow so much in my healing. So make sure you check the description box, get your Kept Journal while we have it with a discounted price, and get back to the episode. Which means not only are we unable to discern fully the motives of others, there is a gap in understanding, which impacts being able to judge. This in itself disqualifies us from being able to make a final verdict on a matter or on a person, right? Because we are limited in our knowledge of the, again, deep intricacies of the soul of a person, and God is not. Now, through the Holy Spirit, we are able to observe the fruit and discern if the fruit that someone is producing comes from the Father or not. But to assume someone's deepest motives to the degree in which we can righteously judge is beyond our boundary because we are a created thing. We are not omniscient. We don't know all things. So, I want you to consider different situations or scenarios where you judge something and you had a deep conviction about it. You just knew that you knew that this was what the situation was, only later to find out that your judgment was incorrect. There was something you didn't consider. There was something that you didn't contemplate. You just didn't know. This again points to why God is the only one who can truly enact vengeance, because he is the only one who can judge in totality, considering all things about the person and all things about the circumstance. All right, the second thing is only God can repay or enact retribution with total justice. Again, the second point is only God can repay or enact retribution with total justice. What does retribution mean? Retribution means punishment inflicted on someone as vengeance for a wrong or criminal act. So it's basically just repayment for what you've done. Why is this? Why can we not truly repay in a just way in totality? Well, it goes back to that first point. The first reason is because we cannot fully judge the motives of a person. We can't accurately determine the severity of the punishment for what they have done to us. Have you ever been in a situation where you look back and after you did something and you were like, man, they didn't deserve that. They didn't deserve that. Or you had a conversation after offense happened and you had already responded and then you realized that you misread the offense. And this was only after you responded with your initial judgment. If this has happened even one time, it has disqualified you from being able to have the capacity to either enact perfect retribution, mean perfect payback, because you either overdo punishment or you underdo punishment. And for holy vengeance, meaning holy payback for what a person does, the punishment must fit the crime. Because if the penalty is lesser or greater than the offense, the vengeance would be unjust. So that is why you and I, both of us, I'm not just talking about you, I'm talking about me, because I have been in multiple scenarios where I wanted to enact vengeance on myself. I'm like, God, that sounds good, but I think I got away. But the way that I would pay back I would probably overdo it, to be honest. I don't know about you. You might underdo it. I would probably overdo the punishment that is rightfully owed for the offense that was taken against me. And then the third thing, only God is able to vindicate us in a purposeful way and in a way that doesn't cause for us to fall into sin ourselves, right? And what does vindicate mean? Vindicate means the action of clearing someone of blame or suspicion. And y'all, if you have ever been lied on, if you've ever been slandered, one of the first things that you want is for your name to be vindicated. It makes total sense, especially if there were onlookers to the circumstance. Not only do you want your name to be vindicated, you also want your character to be cleared up. And in hopes that the people that change their perspective about you because of this slander or because of this lie or because of this betrayal will change it back to a rightful state. It's a human response, right? And it makes sense, but we don't often vindicate ourselves or clear up our names well. I mean, if you really think about it, for me, the more times that I try to clear up my name, or any misunderstanding concerning something about me, the easier it is for me to fall into sin. And the reason why is because most times when you're entering into a conversation trying to clear your name, you enter it with the expectation that, one, you're going to be fully understood. And then two, you're going to be fully agreed with. But that's not always the case, right? Because you're engaging with someone with their own perspective. And they also have the free will to choose to believe a lie or to choose to rejoice in truth. And because you don't know the intricacies of that person's soul like God does, you don't really know what it will take to persuade them to have a different perspective about you. See, as much as we want it, trust me, as much as we want it, we do not have the power to change a person's heart about us. Only God does. And when God does it, he aligns this transition of perspective to align with truth and purpose. And one biblical example that I really want us to focus on so that this can get nailed into your heart and mind is Joseph. The narrative about Joseph. I know all of us have heard about Joseph with the beautiful coat, whose brothers sold him into slavery. But later, after he was sold into slavery, he was also falsely accused and then also imprisoned. But we see in the text that God was with him the entire time. And through this trajectory of time, God begins to prosper him even in the prison. Even when his father thought he was dead because his brothers lied on him and sold him into slavery. But we know that God will eventually elevate him to a very high and esteemed position in Egypt. And eventually in the story, he would come face to face with his offenders, with his brothers. And we see that Joseph's response to coming face to face with the people that had wronged him, that sent him into slavery, that probably were the cause of so many painful moments and woes. This is what he says to them. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. And this is in Genesis 50, verses 20. While I know there had to be so many nights where Joseph felt the weight and the temptation to take vengeance, we see in the text a heart posture that we all should adopt. One in which we look to God to clear our name. But while he is doing that, we are seeking to learn what it is that he would have us to learn in the in-between, right? Because if our focus is always our name being cleared up, we will lose sight of the name that is greater than our own, which is Christ. And I'm not saying that we should refrain from telling the truth, but only to the degree that the Holy Spirit leads us. Okay? Because in his timing, he will make all things right. I mean, I need for y'all to think about Joseph, right? It took 22 years from the time that he was enslaved to the time that he would come face to face with his brothers in Egypt. 22 years until he was properly or totally vindicated for what his brothers had done to him. Can you imagine if Joseph decided to hold his breath for those 22 years? He would have completely missed out on all the character development that God was producing from the time that he left Potiphar's house till he was in prison, till he, interpreting dreams. So now he is second below the Pharaoh. Imagine all of the ways that he would have not grown in intimacy with God if he had just been waiting for God to vindicate his name. So please don't buy into the lie that vengeance belongs to you. Because if vengeance continues to stay in your hand, one, you won't handle it properly because you aren't equipped as a created thing to handle it properly. But also, holding it keeps your hand full of vengeance and less of Jesus, which keeps you from growing. Joseph grew during those 22 years, y'all. He wasn't stuck in this bitter state because of what his brothers did. He still leaned into God, and God was with him. Even when his father, throughout all of these years, thought he was dead, y'all. Can y'all imagine someone doing that to y'all? He still trusted in God. And God kept him throughout those 22 years, and to the point where when it was time for vindication, Joseph had a heart posture to be able to lean towards the offenders, his brothers, and have mercy on them. Who knows if Joseph would have been able to do that in year 2, in year 3, in year 4. But in year 22, he was able to show them justice. He was able to show them mercy instead of punishment. And maybe that is the very thing that God is trying to cultivate in your heart. While you are just looking for someone to come and say, you know what, you were right, I was wrong. Maybe God is like, actually, I want to cultivate compassion in your heart. I want to cultivate other-mindedness in your heart. And this is not to say that God does not vindicate, because we already have seen in the text, God said, I will repay. That is a promise. But we have to entrust it to him to repay in the way that he sees best, because he is the only one who can judge in a righteous way to be able to pay back or give a type of retribution that is just to that person. So remember these 3 points. 1, God is the only one who can judge impartially. That's why you need to leave it to him. God is also the only one who can give back the punishment with perfection, meaning justly give back what is deserved because of the offense. And then truly, God is the only one who can vindicate us without us falling into sin. And because he is the one who deals with the heart of man. We don't have that power. So he knows how to shift a perspective of a person that has a warped view of you. I just want y'all to settle here, because the thing is, if we don't learn how to hand vengeance over to the Lord, forgiveness is going to be extremely difficult. Because to forgive means to surrender it all. It means to say, God, the vengeance that I have because of this injustice, I'm giving it to you, and I trust that you will do what is right concerning a matter. Because the truth is, and some of y'all not gonna like what I'm about to say, the truth is, for most circumstances, things that were done to us, not all, but some things that were done to us that we feel like we have the perfect perspective on what was done is even faulty. As much as they are the offender, in some ways, we are the offender as well in our own circumstance, which again is why it is important to hand it over to God to judge, so that you can have the freedom to grow in the in-between, to get to a point where whether he vindicates you in this life or not is not the point of it all. It is to continually be close with him, continually grow in the grace and knowledge of who Christ is, so that we can be more like him and be like Joseph, to get to a point where we can extend grace and mercy to our enemies. So I want to know what y'all think about that. In the comment section, what are some things that are like a stumbling block before you that keeps you from trusting that God truly will vindicate you? Trusting that vengeance really does belong to God. It doesn't belong to us. What are the things that keeps that block in your mind? So that's all I got for you today. But I really want to hear your feedback. And this is a topic that is constantly before me, because there are always opportunities to want to pay something back. So again, seek the Lord on this. Pray and ask God to help you, to trust him enough to leave it to him. All right, ladies. So I pray that y'all have an amazing week, and I'll see y'all next week. And until next time, y'all stay kept. Hi, everyone. This is Tierra Lebbie. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode. If you have not already subscribed to the YouTube channel, make sure you hit that button. And if you are my ladies listening on the podcasting platforms, make sure you go follow. And y'all, in general, if you are enjoying KeptPodcast content, make sure you share it with your friends, anyone that God puts on your heart. But until next time, stay kept.